One thing that the MAC concerns as well very much is that this discussion we are doing really approaches many people. And I have to say this is during summer, so this is not what you see during the year, but it's a summer title. But it says quite clear that we are on the wrong path, but not so many things are happening. I think one of the problems is that this is still quite as an abstract topic. I think it needs as well a kind of language which is understandable to many people to understand where we are. And I show you two products. And I think one thing we will speak about later is as well this kind of thinking in life cycles and life cycle analysis. And you can do this with very simple tools as well to get an understanding of how products work today. So this is when you disassemble the convenient coffee maker. And this is the disassembly of a product which has been designed in 1933, which was a time where we had some lack of resources. And it's quite interesting how intelligent this product is. And as a last input, I show you a very rough life cycle analysis. It's the carbon footprint of both of these two coffee makers. And you see the top column on the capsule machine. This is the good idea of having capsules, just that. And the bottom column of the capsule machine is the production of this complex machine. And the darker gray in both columns mean that's the energy that we use in order to heat up the water and create coffee. And you see that the product of the 1930s is more or less half of this footprint that our modern times coffee maker has at the moment. As we do it every time, we start the discussion panel with a short introduction of the panelists. So each of the panelists has roughly 5 minutes, and then I try to stop everyone to give a little bit an insight of what these people are passionate about, what they do and what they work on. And after this short introduction, we start our discussion on the panel. I start with Professor Helmut Andrikowicz. He's professor for non-ferrous metallurgy at the university in Leoben. And I met him the first time at a conference where we both spoke about resource scarcity. And it was so interesting to me that I'm very happy that he joins us this evening and maybe joins us in the future as well to really tackle these challenges. What I found very interesting is that he is advising big companies in the questions of resource scarcity. So what he told me that there is really big companies that they have concerns about running out of resources that they use today in order to produce things. And he helped me a little bit as well for the analysis of the performance that you saw before. Please.
Only a few words concerning our work at the university. You mentioned we did a lot of work and do a lot of work concerning recycling. Recycling especially of non-ferrous metals. That is one important point. Non-ferrous metals, for instance, alumina, you saw it before, copper, but also zinc, lead, and so on. But also elements like rare earth we always use in our daily life. And we try to recycle this from metallurgy view. We are not in detailed work concerning the collection, also not in the treatment of this material, but afterwards to treat this material to get again these metals. A second important part is also the primary metallurgy and the design of materials. That means how we can produce new materials, new alloys without, I would say, elements we have to import from other countries, but we have, of course, the problems in Europe concerning our resources in Europe. Therefore, it's necessary we have a high importing rate to supply our high-tech industry. And only one word concerning this topic you mentioned before. You are really right if concerning the different recycling routes. You mentioned seven times you can recycle, but in industry this Nespresso capsules often used afterwards for casting alloys. Only one recycling step is necessary for another alloy, and then we have a higher yield afterwards. It's not the case in industry that we use this material again for producing new capsules. That's the point. But if we use this material, then we of course have this calculation you mentioned before. And these are the topics we deal with. That means recycling and primary metallurgy of non-ferrous metals, and of course also the development of new materials and alloys.
We are very happy that this evening Miquel Ballester joins us. He's co-founder and responsible for product management and innovation at Fairphone. And he has a background in industrial design and engineering, and I think during his studies he also went into sustainable development. So this is not that easy. I think there is many studies still which do not really touch this kind of issue. And I think because of that you have as well this position at Fairphone. And we're looking forward to a short presentation of Miquel and what he's doing at the moment.
Thanks, Harald. Can I have the... So, no, I'm not the CEO of Fairphone. I'm a co-founder. So I always say I was there at the right time, in the right place, to meet Bas van Abel, who is our CEO. And together with other small group, we started Fairphone. After a long period, I'm going to go to my last slide because I think it's better. After a period of being an awareness raising campaign, so Fairphone was trying to unravel all these issues that we are talking about. Actually, on 4 pillars we move our projects. One is fair materials, where they come from, how they are mined, how are they achieved, working conditions, so how are all these products that we talk about are made, the design of the product itself, and the end of life. After these 3 years of being an awareness campaign, we decided to move into a new stage in 2013 and become a company. And a very special company, so social enterprise, We also do what Harold was doing here with the coffee capsules. I think you were looking for some tangibility, right? Like something that you can show and that people can grasp and understand. And then we thought, why not start making a phone? Like a complex piece of electronics that is, is produced over different countries, that ends up in Europe, has all these issues embedded in it, and by making this phone, we can unravel all this complexity and we can talk about it, and we can just, with a very transparent model, explain people how things are done and how can be done a little bit better, more fair, as we say. Another issue that keeps us very busy, and you touched upon this difference between the two coffee machines and how smart the design was when resources was not there. The longevity of the devices is very important for us also. Not only, and that's part of the circular economy, I would say. That's something that we are achieving with Fairphone 2, which is the first modular smartphone in the market. I could do the trick like you did with the... If you hold this, I'll do it. Like you did with the capsules, I also have something I can play with. So Fairphone 2 is basically a device that is very easy to open and repair. So how many people here have ever broken their screen of their phone? Don't tell me anybody. Okay. Because that's normally the case. So this phone has a very easy to replace screen, and further 3 modules that are very easy to replace also for those parts that break fastest. Of course, this is not only, I'm finishing, I know I only have 3 minutes. This is not only the only issue, so design is very important, but we are talking in general here about resources. But this is part of the story, that we can use our devices longer. It also stresses a bit less the resources. Had some slides. I was not going to define more what Fairphone was doing, but just throw some striking statements so that we can talk about them. We can talk about recycling, but there will always be a fraction of the materials that we need that actually come from the ground and that need to be mined by people that sometimes go down a hole of 60 meters and have to stay there until they have enough materials to come out and sell it. We can also get it from all devices, so what you call urban mining. And this is one project that we did also. We not only put mobile phones in the market, but we take out mobile phones from the market that are going to make it to a landfill. Also very important. You can also get a lot of materials from there. And there are, of course, new technologies that are coming, and that's very related also with the context of the city that you were talking about, where there's not maybe big manufacturing facilities, but things like 3D printing today are offering some possibilities that are becoming more and more complex as we go. I mean, last thing I heard is in Amsterdam they are going to build a bridge with 2 3D printers that are going to meet in the middle. So I thought, when we get to this point, we can do anything. But that also causes another problem, no? We always talk about all this production happening in other countries and wanted to bring it back to Europe, but actually most of these things will be robotized in the future, I think. I don't know, what do you think? And that's it. So with Fairphone, we try to unravel most of these devices, or most of these issues, put them out there, be very transparent, and talk about them. And that's also what I'm doing here. So.
Thank you for this short intro. Next panelist, I have to welcome Ms. Sonja Eser. She organized, I think, a very nice conference at the University of Applied Science in Salzburg about circular design. She's doing research on circular design, and she's teaching about circular design. Interesting that she is a biologist, which I think gives the right perspective to the topic.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to this panel to discuss with you why we need a different production in the future and why we need a circular economy and eventually how we can get there. So we have, oh, sorry, there should have been something on the slide. So we have built systems that support a non-sustainable behavior. So you should have seen our linear economy model. so where everything we produce ends up in waste. And in average, a material is only used once in Europe, which is not very much. So the effect are scattered resources all over the place. You maybe have seen these trash wave or similar pictures. And we cannot use these resources anymore. There are also a lot of poisonous substances in actual product design. Like in this popcorn bag, you find hormone active substances which can cross the placenta barrier and increase the effect of miscarriage. We also find carcinogenic toxics in these soft toys over there, or heavy metals in dolls and other toys. And usually it's not expensive to change these products into healthy products. So this only costs eventually some cents more. It's a thing of decision and deciding what kind of product I design. So all these, with all these system errors, we have established enormous problems also for all the other species around here on the planet. And as you mentioned, I'm a biologist from my background, and I'm really concerned about this mass extinction we are pushing. And the global trading system, like you showed for Fairphone, for the metals, it allows production with lots of threats to species in countries we don't see and can't control. And habitat degradation is far removed from the place of consumption. As you can see here on the right, this small monkey is from Central America, and it's threatened by coffee and cacao plantations, and these are consumed in Europe and the US. So we have to look for the big picture if we are dealing with biodiversity loss, and look also in production and in product design where the problems arise. So, but there are solutions, and we'll discuss these solutions, I hope, this evening. And typically, the consumer is blamed. He has to shop less, and end shopping, and all is fine. At least all is fine for industry and politics. So, just to say my point of view, it's not the fault of the consumer. Sorry, I have to go back. There are plenty of proofs about the manipulation of consumers. For example, here in the supermarket, where the special light and mirrors pimp up this mediocre quality of the fruit and vegetables, where your route through the supermarket is perfectly designed by consumption researchers, and usually also this trolley is so big that even after a bulk buying, it still looks empty. So the main argument is that the consumer wants to have every year a new smartphone, a new television set, or a new car, but that's not really true. Products are not designed to last. Already in 1932, Bernard London wrote his book, Ending the Depression Through Plant Obsolescence. There, the idea was born to reduce the lifespan of a product artificially, so that more products could be sold. Up to that year, the problem was not that to supply the people with products, but to organize buyers for all the plenty products that had been produced until then. And he, in his book, he complains that people during the Depression in the US kept products as long as they were working, as they were functioning, while before they had replaced them for mode of fashion or for up-to-dateness. So the ideology was built to this time with this ever-growing economy and with this obsolescence. And it worked. And already in 1960, there was this book published, The Waste Makers, which criticized the integrated wastefulness in the capitalistic economic process. So what has happened since then? Every year a new product is released, it's revamped, it's just designed a bit new. The technique is not really new, but the design has changed a bit. So the product you own then already looks outdated. And so this called psychological obsolescence is just one example of the many tricks industry has. So to sum up, it's not only the consumer, it's not the greed, but it's a behavior that is triggered by this linear economic system we are all in. So we have to change the system. We have to produce like nature does. In nature, everything goes in cycles, and we can do the same thing with our products. There are no toxics released to the environment, renewable energy is used, so this is where we should go. So we have to stop with this linear economy and go for the circular economy. And just to say some few things about the circular economy, it's not all about recycling waste, like this tire, for example, where we have a lot of problems with the toxic substances inside. No, it's also about inventing the stuff completely new, so that these products are fit for cycles, are fit for the circular economy. We also have to design for climate change and climate protection, or against climate change for climate protection. So we can use all the biological nutrients which are bound in the products to fix carbon dioxide and to rebuild our soil, to rebuild humus. So I personally made my pioneer project with constructing our family home according to cradle-to-cradle principles. So we followed all these principles and we tried to make it as long life as possible, non-toxic, to celebrate life and all the stuff which is in cradle to cradle. And our house is also a material bank. So we have a passport for it where every material is listed. So eventually after the end of this house, persons after us can pick up out the material and use them in a sensible way again. So as a biologist, I'm interested in that we can leave life behind instead of death. So that is what we work, or that is why I work for products for circular economy, and I hope we will have an interesting discussion about this evening.
The next panelist is Professor Stefan Saalhofer. He is Associated Professor at the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences in Vienna. He is head of the Institute of Waste Management, and he did a very interesting research on electronics and environment, which I think makes him the perfect fit for our discussion round today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, welcome. Just a couple of slides to show you what I'm working with. We already heard the linear economy, and this is what it looks like. We consume resources, we extract resources by mining and by other means. We use it in production, we consume, and finally we landfill all the products and the reminders of our consumption. And well, that's very common knowledge. There is two problems related to that. When you take a look at this landfill here, you may assume there is some environmental impacts, groundwater pollution, air pollution, and so on. That's the one part, and the other part is this continuous use of resources, which may lead to the depletion of some materials. Okay, this was the wrong. Okay, so circular economy. There is a solution for all these problems, and it's called circular economy. That's the good news I want to bring to you today. It means we just need to take all these products and to recycle them and bring back the materials. And this will replace a part of these primary resources, and this will reduce the waste going to disposal, going to landfill, being lost as a material. And for some part, this has become reality. When you consider waste management in Central Europe, you will really find such systems in place. So we made big progress, we made big steps, and that's what I'm doing research on further developing such systems. What do we need for this? We need waste collection schemes, all of you is familiar with this. We need to walk to some places and to drop our waste at the collection facility, at the collection point. So we need to be motivated and informed citizens. We need to be willing to contribute to this. Then we need technology for the processing of the secondary materials. This looks a bit better than it is in reality, so we do not have technology to recover something like rare earth metals or other scarce materials. We need, as an outcome of this recycling process, some high quality secondary resources. It doesn't make sense to recycle for the sake of recycling and to produce something which is not used then. And we need a market, and that's the last point. Recycling to a good extent is failing due to lacking markets. Nobody wants to buy these recycled materials, and then it does not make sense. The recycling society you can see here, we are very successful. This is a picture showing what has taken place in Austria through the last 20 years, from 89 to 2009, and the gray area is waste being disposed of, so not used, but landfilled, incinerated, and the yellow and green bars, this part is recycled. So we really have been successful in recycling. But there is some limitations. I'm glad that we had this introduction to see that 100% of recycling does not exist. Then we need to keep in mind that we still follow the philosophy of a growing economy. So we need more, and we need to produce more, and we need to consume more. But in a growing economy, the demand cannot be covered by recycling. That's simply not possible from a physical point of view. Then research shows us there is some limitations in terms of quality and contaminants. There is research that shows that paper recycling may lead to an enrichment of organic pollutants. So recycling is good, but we also buy something with it, which probably we do not want. That may also be additives. For metals, this may take in alloys, so that's limitations. And if we want to recycle 100%, of course, this will cost. If it would be economical, feasible, we would have such systems. Some companies would come up and say, okay, I do this business, I will earn money, but unfortunately, this is not true. There is a limitation where the costs are higher than revenues, so we have to pay for it. Some points that might be relevant for our discussion today is the question, do we need more product-related information? What about eco-design? It has been discussed for many years, but I don't see so much eco-design in real life. Then what about repair and reuse? Can it play a significant role in our product use? Which is the role of producers? This is addressing the extended producer responsibility topic. And finally, maybe we can also talk about service instead of products. So far, some ideas, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. The last panelist I want to introduce is Helmut Spudig. He's Vice President Corporate Communication and Responsibility at T-Mobile Austria. He supervises and shapes company sustainability strategy, and I think we are very happy that he is here today because I think this is a very valuable example how big corporations can do their contribution to changing things and introducing a little project. I would really call it a little project in this huge amount of big manufacturers. A little project of some crazy guys in Amsterdam associated with Waag Society coming to the crazy idea of making a phone themselves. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about this cooperation and where you see this potential for T-Mobile.
Sure, good evening. I'm picking up on that, and I would first like to sort of give you the bigger picture of what we mean about how we make our company a more, no, it's actually just one slide, how we make our company a more sustainable partner in this society. And so there's, I think, a basic strategy that says, let's be less and less of the problem and more of the solution. That sort of is something we're trying to achieve, and it's not, when I talk about this, it's not something that's there, that's perfect, it's something that needs to be working on. So what does it mean? On top I said, and it's an example of what's meaning less of the problem, as of 2015 we have turned into a complete CO2 neutral company. If you're interested, we can tell you more about how we do this. Mainly we are doing it by both trying to work on energy efficiency, by sourcing energy that's CO2 free, so it's hydrogen power, some solar power, a little bit of wind power at this point, and compensate for the rest. That's a 90-10 split at this point. The second part is that we aim to have sustainable products. And the first thing that comes to mind is the Fairphone or is other phones, but the actual part of what our core product is the connectivity. And that's part of our general infrastructure. So what we do is not give a phone in your hand. Yes, we also do that. But what we actually do is make that phone or make your home appliances or make your cars and many more things in the future be able to communicate and enable certain things to do. So the core of our sustainable productivity means that we're putting in place systems that actually work for 20 years and more. We are still using some of the technology which was installed back in 1996 when the company started. If you make a phone call, part of that is on old systems which have been renewed. And part of it is on newer systems like LTE, that's the buzzword that is keeping us today. And part of that is also taking some responsibility on what kind of products we offer our consumers. That's where the Fairphone deal comes into the equation. We say, if you use a phone, that's your last mile in our sustainability issue. Because we do our job to be more sustainable in terms of how we deal with energy, how we deal with waste in the company, stuff like that. But then you as a consumer make a buying decision. It's not our decision, it's your decision as a consumer. And in order to enable you to make a more sensible buying decision, that's the reason why we have partnered with Fairphone and allow you to make an own decision. There's two more parts of that pillar of saying let's be less of a problem. One is we buy back your used phone. So you walk into any T-Mobile store, there's actually an application for that called Handy Ankauf, where you can check out the value of your phone. And it basically works like a used car market. We buy back your phone. We have a partner, TechCycle, which takes in these phones, refurbishes them, and actually they are being used again on a secondary market as second-hand phones. If your phone doesn't work at the end of its life cycle, eventually we take them back for recycling. Nothing to be especially proud of because we're legally required to do that, and maybe we can also at some point get into the discussion who should be the responsible partner for the recycling. Is it the merchant or is it the producer? And I think there's an issue there. So that's that part of the equation. I think where we have a big story to tell, and there's quite a few studies on that, is that mobile communications enables us in many ways to leverage this to make a more sustainable environment. One of the easy examples to bring is the logistics of transporting goods, and people can improve greatly in their efficiency and therefore use less energy, have less and fewer emissions, use fewer cars by using mobile technology. So that's something that's in place. I've called this the smarter everything. You know, it's a term, you know, a buzzword that's around everywhere, but one way is that you become more energy efficient in your own consumption. If you look into the near future, actually, if you look at self-driving autonomous cars, which will bring about a complete change of how our transportation works, from a more efficient use of cars, putting less cars on the street, eventually to a different kind of operation where not the individual but a fleet owner operates and can take a different responsibility on what to do with these cars once their life cycle is gone. So that's a big development where mobile communication is at the core. And finally, what we do, we annually support and award projects which use mobile technology for sustainable innovation. And that's sort of getting some seed money into this development so we can develop stuff like that.
Thank you very much. I think it will be good, because of this panel, to stay for a while with the example of the Fairphone, because it's an example which I think makes people understand that there is alternatives, that it's possible to make things different and to combine value to something, to ask questions we haven't asked before. If things are fair, we ask if our bananas are fair, but there is many things. Is our cars produced in a fair way? Is what all the other things? So it seems that it's good enough for us if bananas are fair, but how did you come to the ideas to ask this question for the mobile phone?
I think, like what I was saying in the beginning, that mobile phones are objects that are so complex that you have to start with transparency. And for us, that's very important. Transparency sometimes is also a buzzword, but when I say transparency, I mean, this unraveling of a complex system, right? Like, that's something that is hidden and that you don't know about, and all of a sudden is kind of unfolded in front of you and explained in simple words that you can understand. And with this transparency comes the empowerment of the different stakeholders that also form this complex system. And I don't mean only consumers, and I really agree with you that sometimes consumers are blamed for what they do. Actually, the stakeholders in this economic system are much further than just consumers, are also companies, are also research institutes, all these stakeholders need to talk with each other. I was in the beginning of tonight asking a very simple question, like how many times have we seen, for instance, manufacturers, PCB manufacturers, no, like the guys that make the green stuff in our mobile phones, actually work with recyclers to see how they can change the way they produce PCBs. And to my surprise, it's always, very often, the answer is they don't work together. So that's also what and that's what, you know, like in asking these questions it's just an excuse to be a little bit strategically naive, if you want, you know, like to say, by asking a question, you say, I don't know the answer, can you explain me? And then opening up this information to consumers and other stakeholders and making them part of all these projects that we do, either in materials, either in human rights, in manufacturing, or electronic waste.
So maybe you can just tell a little bit how you did it, because I found it very, it's this kind of naive research, a kind of action research, traveling to a mine in Africa and asking if everything is fair. So how did you do that?
Yeah, so you're talking about the very beginning of Fairphone when it was just an awareness campaign. So that was literally like, you know, 4 people in this Bach society that you were talking about, the foundation in Amsterdam. Yeah, starting this fact-finding mission, no, that they went to Congo to research where was the source of conflict minerals and what were the issues related to that. So that was the very beginning, but I think that approach has been just as we do it every day. Either it is, you know, getting into a meeting with, as I said, a PCB manufacturer or a gold salt manufacturer to get to that information that will end up in these bigger projects. I can give some tangible examples. For instance, fair trade gold. Gold is a material that is heavily used in our electronics because it's a very good material that makes for very good connections, to put it in simple words also. But so the electronics industry is actually the 3rd industry in the world in weight of volume of gold manufacturing. But they were not using fair trade gold. And fair trade gold is available. It's already, it has been developed already for many years. And it's there, in our case, it's a mine in Peru. So we had to kind of put all these stakeholders together and say, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we make fair trade gold get into electronics manufacturing? And now our PCB manufacturer, which by the way is an Austrian company, ATNS, is using fair trade gold in the manufacturing of PCBs. But that required not only us and the mine and fair trade gold as an organization, but also the smelter that was smelting the gold salt manufacturers. There's a lot of these kind of stakeholders that are in this gray area that we as consumers don't see, but believe me, they also don't see each other. So they also don't talk so much with stakeholders that are not immediately before and after these supply chains that we are talking about. And it's systemic change is needed, so we need to start thinking bigger and making these kind of partnerships that bring all these people together.
Professor Andrikovic, can you a little bit give us an insight about where everything starts at the mines? Maybe we take the example of phones.
Yeah, a short introduction in pyrometallurgy. In our phones, we use, it depends on the phone of course, we use 40 to 50 metals, different metals, that we have it's possible to have the functionality. And these metals you mentioned before, they are produced, tantalum is one of these metals, in, for instance, Congo, but also in other countries. Gold is another metal which is very important. Another group of metals, they are also important, are the rare earths. And the starting point is always the mine you mentioned. Of course, we try to improve the recycling of these different metals, but at the moment, the production takes place in these countries where there is a mine. For instance, for the rare earth, 95% of all rare earth we used in all our products are produced in China. And the ecological frame of this production is not really high. At a mine, we produce the ore. Sometimes there is only a low amount of, especially in gold, but also tantalum and so on, in this ore. Then there is a beneficiation, that means a treatment of this ore. And then we get a concentrate where we have a higher value of these elements. But at this process, at this treatment, at first at the mining and also at this treatment of the ore to get a concentrate, we lose a lot of different metals. At the moment, we have billions of tons of this treatment waste, which is landfilled near these mines. So when we have the concentrate, it depends on the ore and on the metal. What are the next steps? Sometimes there is a a pyrometallurgical step. That means a melting and processing and afterwards refining of the material, or sometimes there hydrometallurgy, that means a leaching process where we get the metals in a solution and to refine this solution, and afterwards we extract these metals out of this solution. And sometimes it's necessary, especially for the rare earth, but also for gold, we have different refining steps, because especially in electronic devices, we need really a pure metal. For instance, for gold, 99.9, also for rare earth or something like that. And that means a really intensive refining process, pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy. And during this process, we also generate a lot of waste, really a lot of waste. And sometimes a waste we have to think a little bit concerning the ecology in this field. And then we have the metals, and then we can use these metals in these devices. And we need, from the mining to the metal, a really high energy demand. That means a lot of energy is in each metal we use. And that means if we throw away our products, we throw away a lot of energy. Also the same in this capsule as you mentioned before. If we use the primary metallurgy in aluminium, for instance, we need, this is only a value, 200 gigajoule per ton, and then for the recycling, we need only 10% of this energy demand. And therefore it's necessary to increase the recycling process. But you mentioned before, with recycling alone, we cannot cover the demand, the metal demand we need for all our products. Therefore it's necessary at first for the amount, and second, of course, for the quality, that we use this mining process. And in this mining process, I mentioned the different steps, we need a lot of energy. And therefore, we have in mind that we have products as, like a mobile phone, like other devices. We have a lot of energy inside of these devices.
Resource scarcity, just maybe 2 sentences to that. When you have to advise Fairphone people, what would you advise to them? Which resources run out?
No. One note here. We have enough resources, also in 1 million of years. Even our newspaper Kronenzeitung always tell us we have no resources in 10, 20, 40 or something like years. We have enough resources, and that's clear also for the next million of years. But sometimes it's necessary, if we look all over the world, and sometimes it's necessary to need more energy to get the metals out of these resources. That is one point. And the second point, if you look to the fossil energy, is it really a good idea to use these resources for instance, burning or something like that? But concerning resources, we have enough. If we look all over the world, it's the first. Scarcity is really a problem, especially in Europe. That is an important point, and this is connected with the price volatility. And this is a very important point also for our industry. That is important that we get in an easy way, all these metals or resources for our high-tech industry. That's really important. And if this is not possible, the industry will go in these countries where the resources are. That's also an important point for Europe. And therefore with recycling, we can lower the scarcity at first, and we can lower the price volatility, which is very important for our industry, and therefore recycling is very important in Europe.
This might be the reason why the European Union brought circular economy to their agenda.
Yes, that's very important, yes.
Sonja, you're teaching circular design, and I think your universities, maybe in Austria, some of the exceptions of teaching this kind of thinking. You mentioned it before. Eco-design is a kind of engineering coming out of mechanical, of the engineering discipline. So in my perception, that was beginning of the 90s where it becomes a topic. And you said Vance Packard is from the 60s. What happened? Why do these things do not come to the ground? Why? So maybe you respond on that. Why the eco-design is something we are not able to think? What's the problem?
Yeah, what's the problem? Well, one problem I found is that it's very difficult to design such a product which is modular constructed, where you can reuse parts, repair them, so you need special techniques. And they are, I think, seldom taught. So you need special connections for bringing these parts together so that you can disassemble them again. So what I found is that the basic technique is seldom taught in universities. So that is one part. And as I have to do a lot with these design students in Salzburg, it's also very difficult to implement this into this design process where you are in a part creative, intuitive, trying to figure out the emotional part of a product. And so there came up this cradle-to-cradle concept, which is quite, where you can quite, grab it and say, okay, I focus on this kind of process now. But it is, well, Michael Braungart has worked on it for over 25 years, but it only got attention, I would say, here in the European area for the last 10 years or something like that. So, well, it first had to have the idea of it, like this cradle-cradle vision. Then we had the idea of the circular economy as a new way dealing with the economy in Europe. And I think now, well, the universities, or maybe this has to follow to teach the people how this could eventually work. And of course, eco-design has a long history. As I found, it has changed the last years, coming more and more into the idea of circular economy and circular design. It was, in my point of view, a lot into recycling stuff we have already, kind of these upcycling ideas we have where we take some waste and make a new lamp out of it. And this is not the real way to use stuff or material again, as we've heard that the material loses quality if you are not properly recycle it. So if you are mixing it with other products, fixing it, gluing it, so you can separate it again. And so also eco-design, I think, has now made important steps into, well, defining the material which is used, making it for disassembly, not only just, okay, we take some waste and make a new stuff to make it, well, So not all eco-design, of course, has been this way, but I found that also some design prices have gone in the direction where you have seen the mixture of material which you cannot reuse again. So I think this is important steps we need, and of course, well, there's a problem, as I've said, that it's not the interest that we reuse stuff. It's the interest to sell all the products which are produced. And there has to be this kind of ever-growing market in the idea of this linear economy, that we have this growing economy where growing is good. And as long as we follow this paradigm, it's not so much used to have eco-design or products which you can reuse, resell, repair, whatever. It's the complete different way. So we have this obsolescence in a lot of products where they really run out 2 days after the guarantee has stopped. And so this is, contradiction at the moment. So as a designer, of course you have to design your products for industry. And if you don't have a company like Fairphone who is demanding such design, then you're really into problems. You can build up your own company. And I think we need a lot of entrepreneurs and pioneers in this way that really go for it and make products different. And I believe it's especially the entrepreneurs who can do this and take with them the designers and ask for new design techniques and new design ways. I think this is very important that because you as an entrepreneur went all over the place to look for this very complex supply chain. And if we look at a consumer, he or she is not able to do all this work. So I think this is what we see now, that a lot of new companies, small companies are coming up and bringing all these very, very beautiful products with them who are for circular economy, who are made for circular economy. And I think this is getting more and growing more, but eventually it's not published, and eventually it's not so much talked about. So you're an example, but there are many products who are not so into the focus at the moment. But I feel and I see that it's growing more.
The crazy thing is that most of the principles of eco-design, they're really easy to follow. So modularity, repairability, all these kind of things. Why does it took Fairphone to have the second model to because I'm totally sure that you were aware about these principles when you did the first Fairphone as well.
Well, we did what we could at that point. So Fairphone was a crowdfunded company, so we really started from nothing, and I think this is also why partnerships like T-Mobile, Fairphone are also very important. That some companies that are more established, bigger, that show the sustainability leadership to help also these new companies. And in the beginning with Fairphone 1, we just very bluntly, we didn't have 5 million euros to develop a modular device. And because that's also what development costs when it gets to electronics. So we crowdfunded what we could, and we did what we could at that point, which was have also a beautiful website where you could buy all the components of the phone. So actually, you had to be a little bit technical to do it yourself, but you could literally buy all the components of Fairphone 1 and put them together yourself. But yeah, that was not really, like Fairphone 1, changing a screen still would cost you half an hour or something like that. Fairphone 2, it takes you 10 minutes, 10 seconds, I was going to say. So, we take things step by step, and at every step we try to do what we can at that step. And sometimes you are very constrained by the current system, and if you want to change it, you just need to make steps that make sense, that you can combine with something that is old still, that is working in the current system, but it already takes you one step further. And I would say, yeah, making a modular device, like going through all the technical complexities of doing something modular that still, it's not the thinnest phone in the market, but it fits in your pocket. It is very challenging, and we are very proud that we got there. And you know, who knows in the future, there's so much more that we can do, but we need to be responsible in taking the steps that we are able to take, the risks that we are able to take as an organization as well.
I think what's very impressive that you were more or less the first one on the market to introduce a modular phone, far ahead behind many high-tech companies in the world which are not really following the idea of eco-design. I think it was a quite impressive demonstration when you disassembled your phone. I think this is the elegance of what the Italian espresso maker had years before. I have one of these recycling bags here. Symbolically, we will put your phone in it. And so it still works. And I think this is something which is another strange thing, that there is so many, when we speak about urban mining, there is so many people which have their phones still in their drawers because they think they are valuable for them, although they never touch them anymore. But I think in fact they are valuable in terms of urban mining. And I think the service design from this point is maybe really an important step to bring back these resources back into recycling process. Maybe you can respond on that.
That's an interesting question. The actual rate of people bringing back and recycling phones is very, very low. There is probably one reason that we can follow, that there is a big player on the market, Ö3 Wundertüte, where a lot of people keep their phones and turn them back in. I don't know their numbers, but still, even with Ö3 Wundertüte, it's probably less than 10% of the phones being turned back in. And I think one of the reasons is that phones usually are quite long-living. They don't go out of working, but they simply, they might need a new battery, which in newer phones is difficult to replace or costs you money. But they also start lacking functionality because there is a change in functionality. And so in a way, you're getting a new phone and you have the feeling that you keep this old phone. Now, this trickle-down process in families and friends, but in a way you keep it because you never know. And of course, they also don't take up a lot of space. So having 10 or 15 phones in a drawer back home, who cares? So eventually, I think we'll see more of this. But at this moment, it's a slow process. And it's really interesting because, for instance, we started our buyback kind of offer a year ago, 2 years ago in announcement, but actually 1 year ago was the first time when this actually went into a broader game. And if people were bringing back phones, say an iPhone, which was 2 years old, you still got 350, 400 euro, depending on what shape it was in, but people are not really using that to a great deal. So it's quite magic. But I would like to pick up on some of these topics. I think that electronics actually has good news and bad news. On the bad news side, you still have upgrades, and I think it's going to be a challenge for Fairphone. These components work in lockstep. So if you add a new camera module, which is on your roadmap for next year, it has a higher demand on your processor and on other parts of the phone. So how much can you actually change modules without at some point coming down to the nitty-gritty, the processor, which is on the motherboard, which you can't change? That's a really interesting question. But the good side is that a lot of the upgrading today works through software. If you look at electric cars, and I'm not saying that they are the end of great advances in sustainability with the car industry, but you look at an electric or electronic car, basically there is an engine which can last as long as the engine lasts. There is a frame which lasts as long as the frame can last, and the rest is software. I mean, overdoing it a little. And basically, while this car is in use, it can get upgrades and become a more modern car. So I think there is sort of a mixed picture in which way that the electronic industry is developing. And you can see this in our networks and actually in the global sales numbers. We have now globally reached sort of a plafond of new phones coming onto the market. And basically the growth story in smartphones is peaking, you know, because people have the smartphones they have and they start keeping them longer again. You probably recall the old Nokias and Siemens, and people had them sometimes. You still meet people occasionally who use them, because the demand for new functionality did not pick up as quickly. In smartphones, you had a really quick, quick ascension of new functionalities, and that sort of is peaking on the hardware side. If you use an iPhone that's 3 years, 4 years old, basically does the same thing as the new ones. Some things are different, cameras plus, and so on. But so there's actually, I think, through software and the upgradability of hardware, there is quite a chance that we start to tackle that problem also from a different side, where, you know, the obsolescence is not the issue anymore. And I think it's an interesting sign that one of the largest players in this market, Google, is a software company. So, you know, they have a certain interest in hardware because it needs to run, but, you know, they're not living by selling hardware. So that, you know, gives some direction that some of this is changing in the mix.
I would like to respond a little bit to that, because I think as a society who wants to transform into a more sustainable way of living, we have to ask ourselves how much is enough. So to have growth and to have 4K, 8K, whatsoever, that drives economy which could collapse maybe, which not makes us happier at the end, and which might be a problematic vision for the future. I would like to symbolically hand over this recycling back to you, and would like to comment a little bit what happens when this recycling back enters your area of expertise.
Well, as mentioned before, we have some recycling technologies, and this has been developed through the last 20 years, going from the very simple scrap business into much more details and into the recycling of electronics. But anyhow, I think it's not the real smart solution. Recycling can play a role, will play a role, and always is needed, but we need for the future something more intelligent. And I see some very valuable contribution with the Fairphone, which basically says we can use a product for longer time, so we don't need to recycle it. Recycling is not very intelligent. There is more out there, and we can do better. For me, the big question is there driver? Is there an economic benefit? And is there something out that makes industry interested in this business? And we talked a bit about eco-design before, and I'm following this since years. We have done a lot in improving the analysis. Life cycle assessment today is state of the art, so we know how to calculate and how to find out the benefits from this product compared to other products, and that's nice. So the information is there, but the products are not there. And I think one reason is there is no real benefit for industry to go into this direction. And so it's not a technical issue. The technology will follow, but it's the economies which are impeding at the moment this next step. And I appreciate a lot your development, but I need to keep in mind this is a beginning, very promising, very good, but it's not the big business taking place today.
But let's make it a little bit concrete, because I would really, I'm so happy that you're here, but make it a little bit concrete. A good recycling company gets this package here. What comes out? So.
Let me tell you a story. I'm in a project where we try to encourage e-waste recycling in Africa. And this is 4 cities in Africa, and so I also attended some of these places, and I went there with the idea, here in Europe we have the recycling technology and we need to bring this knowledge there. So coming there and seeing what's taking place showed me that to some extent this is true. There is no high-tech recycling facility recovering metals which are fragmentized and mechanically separated and melted and so on. No, it's not available. But there is a huge business on repair and refurbishment. So a high percentage of appliances goes through workshops, very informal workshops, very cheap places, but there you will find some people who have a deep knowledge of electronics simply by doing this, by learning this, and so they do not recycle, and also tomorrow they will not recycle these appliances, but they will repair it and they will sell it after that. Of course, framework is a bit different, economics is a bit different, income is different, so a second-hand appliance has more value than in Europe. And this is what I want to say. We need to create the market conditions that enable us this more sustainable handling of products. And then, at the end, recycling can take place and should take place. But before that, we should exploit the products for a much longer time.
But does it mean that this package goes to Africa, or what does your story mean?
No, this...
could happen. It could happen, but...
Well, it could happen. As you mentioned before, there is a take-back and important part. When I understood it right, this goes to refurbishment. So this means there is a repair in an industrial style, in a larger scale, and a product which can be used is brought onto the market again. And this is the much better option than the material recycling.
I can add one example. I did I used this opportunity to get an information about the value of my telephone that I'm currently using. It's 2 years old, and in this kind of take back service, the value is around €80 after 2 years. And then I went to the refurbishment side of some of the companies who offer refurbished phones. And the value for my phone as a refurbished phone is about 200 something. So between the 80 and the 200 something, there is a big business. And it's quite interesting that not more take this kind of business.
It's a very work-intensive business. It's yes, but it's a very work-intensive business because refurbishment is it's industrial in size, but it's a very manual process. You take if you ever go to a production facility for smartphones, you see a long line, very few people, and basically this is where it starts and this is where the phones come out, and few people who actually handle these phones. In refurbishment, each phone individually has to be touched, checked. You have to delete the data in a secure way. So yes, there is a business, but it's not, no industry would go into that because their margins are quite different. It's small-scale businesses that do that because it needs so much handling.
To me, it looks really that there is something wrong, that they're here too often, that evening it doesn't make economically sense because it makes, it makes an impact on our environment and the future of our children. Maybe you can comment on it, why there is this economic problem, why do some recycled resources cost more than the virgin resources? Well, what's wrong with the system?
At first, I agree with you, it's the functionality. And often it's better to do it in this way, to update the software. And the consumer wants to have new things in a really short time. That is the first thing. You mentioned 80 euros are the value inside. If you do a recycling of a mobile phone and there is the possibility you have 100% recycling of each material, you have only 8 euros of these metals inside, for instance, and other things. And it's another, I would say, problem in this connection. The devices and the input of the devices are often will change in future. That means you always have to use new recycling processes. And you have to change the recycling processes. And sometimes it's impossible. Look to this mobile phone. More than 40 metals inside. You cannot recycle all these metals. It's easier to produce these metals from primary resources. It's really more easier. And therefore, sometimes it is better to use it in a secondary or third way. Or you go in this direction, you have one hardware, and you update the software. And recycling is, of course, again, important. You mentioned for ecological ways and so on. But sometimes, if you look to the quality, if you look to the functionality of a future product, the recycling for this product is not necessary or possible sometimes.
So better not to do it?
Sometimes, if you want to recycle all metals, it's better to do it, there is no recycling. Because if you want to recover all metals to the same quality you need it again for the mobile phone, you need a lot of energy to separate this, and it's easier, and you have to use a lower energy demand if you produce it from ores.
If I could add something to the discussion. You said that it is very work intensive if we refurbish, repair stuff. And as I've learned, this actually is the main idea of the European Union to come up with this circular economy. Of course, they are ecological and social orientated, but they are also looking for new job possibilities, and to come up with all these repair and these refurbish, these inner cycles in this kind of new economy. They are telling us it's about 550,000 new jobs which could be built in Europe alone. So I think especially that it is work intensive is a good idea. So not only to spend energy and to recycle those metals, but really to redo them. And we don't only have the companies who I would say refurbish or remanufacture these products. There's also a growing scene of people who are doing them themselves. I'm not sure if this is working with iPhones, but with a lot of other technical stuff. They are hacking these hardware things, and it's a growing community in open source. It's not only open source software, but also open source hardware. That they are sharing how these things are constructed, like on the website of iFixit. I think they are a partner of you, where you can see, okay, how can I repair it? How can I eventually use a part of this product in another product? But this is also a growing community who's saying, well, I don't need a new product, but I need maybe a new part of this product which is not working anymore. So this is also one part of which is evolving now in this new thinking of a circular economy, and I think it's very valuable to have these. And as you told us, in Africa, they are already doing this part of taking things from different products, making a new product out of it. And I think this has to be a very important part in the circular economy. And somewhere in the end, we have to discuss about recycling. But first, we have a lot of steps before this. And I think there comes design to build these things in a different way, so that we don't have to recycle them in a downcycling way, but that we really can use these modular stuff to make new products and eventually to build something completely new out of a Fairphone.
Excuse me, downcycling is of course another possibility to go in, if you want to go in another product, for instance.
Yeah. Let's go back to your example. So you got 80 euros for your phone. What if we build products that are done in a different way, that cost less to refurbish, so that we can move those benefits to the consumer, to incentivize the consumer to increase this 10% of take back that you were talking about. We're only taking back around 10% of the devices that we put in the market. Why? For multiple reasons, but let's imagine that we make a phone that has a module that contains all your data, so that you are not afraid that your data is going to be spread all over. So you take this module and you deliver the rest. Let's think of a phone that is done in a way that repairing a screen, it takes 10 seconds, not half an hour, which will increase the costs of refurbishing, by 30, 40 euros, for instance, if you have to spend half an hour changing a screen. So let's move those benefits to the consumer, so that we make sure that we can incentivize them to take all those 15 phones that we have in the, and not only phones, toasters, and you name it, that we have at home without recycling. So if you ask me, this is also where eco-design comes in place and where it's very important. And I think if we increase this 10% to 90% of refurbished phones, of take-back phones, there will be a lot of new jobs equally, and there will be benefits for consumers to do that take-back.
I think it's also important that we start to differentiate about what kind of products we're talking about, because the electronics that we are now discussing, it's a recent issue, and it has one disadvantage, because at this point there is so much hardware development. I'm giving you an example. 1981 was the year when IBM brought out the first PC, which was sort of standardized. If you would go from the average of 3 years of replacement for a PC to 10 years, which would be obviously an improvement, then we would have 1981, 1991, 2001, 2011, 4.5 cycles. We would still be working Windows 3.1, the phone would still be clunky like that. So, you really have a lot of development here. What we now see in electronics is a paradigm shift, where you the hardware that you have is pretty powerful. I mean, this is more computing power than it took to put a man on the moon. This is where we are. But what's happening now is that the further development moves into cloud services, So if you talk to your phone and your phone recognizes your voice and can do stuff, it can do so not because your processor becomes more powerful, but because of communications that allows you to instantaneously have this kind of work done at the server farm. So I think we need to sort of differentiate between, say, a washing machine, which probably should not be replaced after 5 years, but which would have a longer lifespan, which would have a lot more and easier components to replace, so forth and so on. And the recent stuff that might need more of a quicker turnover before it reaches a certain maturity for longevity. And I think Fairphone, for instance, I think 10 years ago, it would not have been possible because simply things were moving much too fast to allow you to do this. Now I think you're exactly at that spot because, say, you know, your camera module, it's I think 8 megapixel, moves to 12 megapixel. We're sort of reaching the sensible kind of what we need and, you know, how people can stick with it. So I think we need to make a difference between what kind of products also we talk about when we talk about circular at this point and refurbishment and so on.
I think one idea for downcycling could be that your processor maybe goes to a washing machine. You know, when things are, you know, move in between.
Well, this takes place. This is reality in China. PCBs are dismantled. Components are taken out and used for more simple applications. So that's reality.
That's good. But maybe it could be celebrated more, maybe to change the consciousness of consumers that there's something meaningful going on, that it gives life to a new... As it is quite late, I would hand over to some questions of the audience. We don't know if we have a...
I have one question about the perspectives of European design or designers. I've been in China in August because I wanted to have a preview of the future. I don't want to talk about the fabrication there. I have been at the International Fab Lab conference. If somebody wants to have a view on the map of the makers just in Shenzhen, there are about more than 100 maker spaces in Shenzhen. There are a lot of incubators, accelerators, and there are about 6,000 design studios just in Shenzhen. And by the way, you can buy a no-name smartphone on the electronic market, Hachunpei, for $20 there. So I would like to know, what do you see? Where is there any perspective what we are doing in Europe, especially in Austria? And the second thing is, I assume you all are familiar with the disaster at Samsung with the new smartphone with the exploding batteries. And I just read in the media that they want to destroy the whole line of production, which is about 2.5 million of the newest smartphone. And so I was really shocked, and I got in contact with Samsung and brought in the proposal to give the smartphones, to remove the batteries, of course, and to give the smartphones to the maker community. And I'm sure in hackathons or challenges we could came up with a lot of new ideas and downcycling prototypes where I think it would be the worst case scenario if they really destroy all these smartphones.
So maybe second question, could I hand it over to you from the academic point of view, what would you suggest to do with 2 million high-end smartphones?
Well, I think that's more a question of the philosophy of this enterprise to get rid of this problem. So that's more the point. But coming to your first question, I'm very much aware that all or a good part of development and production today takes place in China and other countries. And that's the reason why I've been working with Chinese partners on e-waste recycling through the last years. That's where things are taking place.
Maybe to the European perspective.
Yes, we mentioned this before, repairing and so on, and you are right. At the moment in China there is, I would say, a really highlighting concerning design, also 3D printing and so on. There are different aspects in this field, and it's the functionality which drives this design or something like that, and not the recycling. And how you buy a car or something like that. You buy a car, the type of the car, maybe the color or something like that, the power and so on, but not concerning the recycling. How it is recyclable or something like that. And you are right, the design is very important in future, which functionality different parts will have. And repairing is not the case, because we always want to have new functionality in a shorter time. That's the thing.
Quickly reply.
For me, like the reality that you saw and what that means for the future of Europe, or I would say we've been working on this situation for the last 30 years, I would say, working really hard in having a world that is more globalized. And so these are also the consequences now. Industry started moving to Asia very long time ago for a very different reason. Now all the knowledge is there. So I don't have the answer, no, what it means for the future. I think robotization is going to be one of them. So now we will start buying technology from them that they will have designed, and then we will be able to produce products anyway, because it doesn't matter, because it's a robot. But yeah, I think you know, I see that reality, and I think what you said, like I also studied in a design school, and I can tell you like 40% of my classmates were, you know, Chinese people, and very smart and very brilliant. So this is the reality, and this is the globalized world we're living in. I'm not giving you an answer, I'm just kind of, yeah, this is also how I see it, so yeah.
Is there more questions?
Yes, thank you. I have a question. I hope that wasn't mentioned already in the discussion, because I couldn't be here from the start. The question concerns how can we give natural resources that are used for the production of phones or whatever it is, their true price, because obviously they're not priced the way they should be, and is it okay to increase the price of a product like the phone for consumers? Because if we increase somehow through regulation the price of resources, the end product would increase, and is it okay to like increase the price for everyone, even for the people who maybe want to afford a one phone and they won't be able to do so afterwards?
Sorry, just very brief. I think so from Fairphone, I don't know if you were here. For us, transparency is the answer there. So our phone costs 525 euros, which is a little bit more than what you would find in the market. But you can go to our website and see how much profit we are making exactly for every phone, and where all these 525 euros goes. Not because we think that makes us a more responsible company, but also as a storytelling artifact, as a way to explain consumers and everybody what thing costs and what they are spent on. And I really agree. Like, how can we give more visibility on what is the true cost of all these things that we buy for the environment and for society, and that I think will only come with companies that are more transparent and consumers that are more demanding for this transparency.
Last question. I think that there is still many questions, but I'm very happy that we had this discussion, and I think what's really valuable that different actors in this field come together and think together, just maybe for one night and maybe hopefully more often about this topic. I think interdisciplinarity is something which is really relevant to solving these future challenges. And what I really think is what we can learn, especially from the podium here, that is a mixture of responsible corporates, of activism, of new entrepreneurship. It's maybe a new generation of students which really see design as a really eco-design is something which they do because they cannot think in a different way, and hopefully there is some regulations which put maybe more in relation the real cost of things, because it seems that the invisible hand of the market is not always able to control. Especially the development of human society in the right direction. We hope as well that waste management and will help at the very last point to get out as much as possible. And I totally agree that labor is something which is really a future topic, and refurbishing Fairphones would be maybe, if it's like that, could be a really nice kind of labor in the future. And thank you for participating in this panel. Thank you to the audience being that patient to us. And thank you to all our partners, Mark Departure, my team at the EDRV. And we will still go on with this kind of knowledge production and challenge these future issues. Thank you and good evening.